relationship, or I'm going to share with you about my relationship with my husband and how I went from a place of resentment, well, from love to resentment back to love, and how my brother likes to come on and leave comments. Thanks, Jess. You're not going to want to hear about this. You can leave. So I coach a lot of people around this where it's really a painful place to be when you very much love somebody, you're in love with them, you want to be with them, but you're also feeling a lot of resentment towards them because you've built up so much frustration, maybe around big things, maybe around little things, or both. Put them together, but they go unresolved. They're not communicated well, and then when that happens, we don't get their side of the story, and so we get to develop our story crazy in our head. And that's exactly what I did. I was playing upon this painful story that I created myself around then my boyfriend, then my fiance, and now my husband. And this past year, over a year now, has been the best it's ever been. And I could think of me right now talking to the Emily 2 years ago, three years ago for sure, and explaining how I feel about Max. Max is my husband, and how I feel about myself and how I feel about our future and the things that he does that back then just bugged this shit out of me or drove me crazy, or I thought he definitely needed to change that point of view or change his behavior because it clearly wasn't in line with what I wanted, which was the story I was creating. And if he didn't, then he didn't really want to be with me that badly. He didn't respect me. He didn't love me. He didn't appreciate me. Oh God, it was so emotionally painful. And it was in my head, it was like constant drama, right? So think of your relationship. Are you constantly thinking about it, constantly wanting to solve something, constantly wanting to talk it out with your partner and like, we have to figure this out. We need to solve all our problems right here. And I was so doing that in my relationship. And I remember Max would tell me, and at the time it just pissed me off, but now it's so clear to me. He would say, honey, we don't have to talk about us all the time. We don't have to talk about our problems all the time. And he would say, you're always making something into a problem. And I would get so angry because it just made me feel like it made me feel, right, blaming him there. It added to my story that he doesn't care. He doesn't listen. He's never going to change. I can't believe he doesn't see this as a problem. When the poor guy, he was just like, damn, do we have to talk about problems all the time? Like, aren't there good things? Like, what's your focus, man? Like, that's part of the things that were going on in his head. And now I see that. Now I see how much I was in this victim mindset in my relationship. And when you're in that victim mindset, you blame. You blame your partner for how you're feeling. And we don't do this so directly. I know it's not obvious in your mind, which is why coaching is so, oh my gosh, oh, it's so cute, you guys. Perfect timing. My husband literally just texted me and it popped down my notifications, just a random love you. What perfect timing. Okay, anyways, I love you too, honey. That seems super fucking corny. I get it, but it's fun to be there. It's fun to be in that place in your relationship. But anyways, back to victim mentality in your relationship. So, you're blaming your partner, but I know it's not so clear to you that you may be blaming them for how you're feeling because you feel so justified that they need to help you with this, or they need to communicate about this, or they need to stop doing that. And you have these evidence and these justifications built up a long list. And so you feel so entitled that you're right and they're wrong and they need to change, or they don't respect you, or they don't appreciate you, or they don't love you, or they don't care, or they're selfish. These are all things, or inconsiderate. That was a big one that I would always call Max. Like, he's so inconsiderate. I always used to say that he's just always going to do what he wants to do. He's always going to do what he wants to do. And I said that in a way where it made me so upset and made me feel like I was just in this relationship where I was never going to be heard. But I was creating that story. Because of course, he should always be able to do what he wants to do. Because he is his own human being. And we should all be able to do what we want to do. But that does not mean that we don't communicate our wants and desires with each other. And that we don't learn how to communicate our wants and desires with our partner in a way where they actually hear us and they don't get defensive and they don't feel like you're attacking them. And that's where I had it all wrong. I was nagging, I was attacking, I was blaming. And when you're being accused or being told that you're wrong or being, someone coming at you with a lot of negative emotion, how do you respond to that? Not many people take that well. I don't blame him for how he reacted in many of those circumstances now. I don't blame him. I can totally see why he would act that way, but I'm also not saying that he was perfect. He had his shit too. And still do. Of course we do. We're both our own individuals with both our own belief systems and past experiences and ideas on how life and partnerships should be. And sometimes those don't completely match perfectly. That does not mean that you can't still have a wonderful, loving, fulfilling relationship. But if you're constantly trying to change that person, whether you think you are or not, you probably are. And that's why coaching is so amazing, because you don't see that you are. And I help my clients understand this list of rules that they have for their partner. And it doesn't mean you have to change them, but you at least need to recognize that you have them, you think they should be just following this rule book that you have. And if they don't, then you're going to be upset. And if they don't, then they're not a good partner or a good husband or a good wife, or they don't care about you, or then we make it mean all these things. So it was so hard for me to see it. I got coached on my relationship over and over again. I would apologize on the sessions and just say, I'm sorry, but this is still on my mind. I'm still angry. I'm still mad. And the coach would always be like, it's all right. Let's talk about it. Let's figure this out. And there were like 2 or 3 sessions that I really just remember having these breakthroughs. And I want to share one of those breakthroughs with you. My eyes are getting watery thinking about it, because I was getting coached and I was so upset of the whole situation. I was mad at myself for not being happy in my marriage. I was mad at myself for not feeling how I'm supposed to feel. I was mad at myself for being a coach myself and struggling in one of the most important relationships in my life. I was beating myself up, like all the things that I've learned so well not to do anymore. But in this session, I remember telling the coach, like in tears, I don't want to paint this picture of my husband anymore. I don't want to believe that he's this person that I'm so angry at in my head, because he's not. He's not. He's so good. He's so kind. He's so loving. He's so adventurous. He's so smart. He's so giving. And I was just crying because I felt this guilt and shame around this story that I just realized I had created. And in that moment, I was relieved and sad at the same time, but I was more relieved because I knew that I was done with that fucking story. I was just so done with blaming him for how I was feeling. I was so ready just to change how I thought about him and see what happened. I didn't know where it would get me because I was still in it. It wasn't like everything changed. Everything did change in that moment, but it wasn't like the next day we were just where we are right now. It took time, but I made a commitment to myself that I was going to stop doing the things that through coaching and through self-coaching I had identified were clearly not serving me in my marriage. And a few of those things, so tell me if you relate. Having to prove I was right, like needing to get the last word in. I still struggle with that. Stubborn woman over here. But it was like really, really in me. I needed to prove that I was right. I needed to have the last word. And through practice and really getting in touch with my thoughts and noticing that desire when it would come up in arguments with him, and swallowing my pride and not reacting and not trying to prove that I was right and taking a step away, it was hard at first. I had to practice it continually. And then it was just this relief. I genuinely didn't care to prove that I was right or he was wrong, because I also stepped away from that belief that I was always right and he was always wrong, or that my points needed to be heard so clearly. And when I started doing that, our fights lessened, because